Hi, welcome to the Divine Insight Show. My name is Travis. I'm your host, and I'm very excited to be with you here this week. And I am thrilled to be joined this week by Cedric Bertelli, who will be talking about his incredible work in emotional resonance and his healing work, his institute, his training, all kinds of things. So I'm thrilled to have him on the show. Cedric, welcome to the show.
Hey, thank you, Travis. I'm thrilled to be here. It's good to see you.
Yeah, you too. You too. I always love doing this new video format, so I'm excited to have it. So let's talk a little bit about your background. I know before the show started, we were chit-chatting a bit, and you were talking about that you didn't have a specific formal education, which is where a lot of people might put their thoughts around, oh, who is this guy? What does he think he's doing? But I'm really curious about your background. You said that you were a chef. Can you talk about your kind of progression from chef to healing work? That's very fascinating to me.
Yeah, but yeah, it's well, I come from a tiny little village in France. Tiny. We're 80 people back in the forest.
Oh my gosh.
And it's a bit like the guys in the Amazon, we never saw civilization. Same
Yeah.
thing, but in France. Except that we didn't wear red Speedos, we're just.
Well, I can't even imagine. Well, I don't. When I think of France, I don't think of little villages, right? Because in the U.S. we don't get a lot of exposure to the totality of France. So fascinating. So you came out of the village.
I came out of the village, came out of the forest. And from very early on, I was passionate about cooking and restaurants and things like that. So I went to culinary school. And I put myself to culinary school, and that's what I did as a young kid. And what I can also tell you is, from the time I was very, very young, as far as I can remember, I was very, very anxious. A lot of anxiety, a lot of anger, and that followed me for the rest of my life, really. I became quickly quite successful working in restaurants. I moved to the US in 2001, working for the Ritz-Carlton. First as a chef, and then as a director of restaurants. I was managing the front of the house for them. And during this whole time, I was struggling with anxiety, depression, and all this stuff. And to answer your question, the reason that I did the shift is because I was trying to find ways to feel better. So I tried psychotherapy, I tried different workshops, etc. And everything was very good, but nothing was, I would say, pragmatic enough, in the sense of whatever I was working on, it was a constant work. I was always having to control my emotions, always having to bottom them down, or, deal with them.
So it wasn't going to the source, if you will.
Yeah, that's it. That was an obsession almost. It's like, how? I mean, as I said, the way that I was raised in nature. And when you watch nature, things are healing by themselves. Nature is resilient. And I was convinced from early on that it was a way for people to resolve emotional difficulties and not having to deal with it for a lifetime. So in 2009, I was in a specific place in my life. It was time for me for a change. And I was committed in finding a way to feel better, to be better, to have another life. And I found a program in France. At the time, it was called TIPI, T-I-P-I. And they were climbing at the time, not climbing, claiming at the time. Sorry for my accent.
They were climbing. I'm like, well, I'm a climber. I'm like, let's do it. Let's go.
They were claiming that in 30 minutes, anybody can resolve any kind of emotional difficulty.
Wow, that's amazing. That's a tall order.
That's a bold statement.
Yeah.
But I tried pretty much anything. I run naked around fires in California. You name it. So I said, okay, why not? So I did a session on Skype with a guy in France, and I work on a specific anger that I had. As a kid, I was bullied a lot, and since then, I had a very hard time dealing with big guys. So every time in my team, I had a big guy. I was like a chihuahua, I was like, getting to the neck, right? Because I'm kind of short. I don't know if you can tell, but
I can't tell. Yeah, no.
I'm short. I'm 5'5". So the big guys were like, it was my fight, right? From the moment I had a little power, I was like, okay, payback.
Right.
So anyway, I did my first session on the specific anger I felt toward a guy, poor guy. I mean, anyway. And the emotion I worked on after one session didn't come back. It means like an anger that was feeling in my guts every single day after one try, did not come back ever again.
Wow.
So for me, that was big. So I contacted the guy again, and I learned to do this work on myself by myself, because you can completely do emotional resolutions on yourself by yourself. It's not magical. I will explain that later. It's just something that the body can do. And I resolved at the time 4 more emotions I didn't want to feel anymore: jealousy and anxiety. I don't remember. And I gave myself 6 months to see if the emotions were coming back or not.
Mm.
They didn't come back. So I contacted the main program in France, and I asked if I could join without any education, and they said, yeah, sure, come on down. So I quit my job at the Ritz, and I went back to France for 2 years to study what I'm doing now.
Mm.
Came back in the States in 2011, started to do sessions, conferences, and I started to teach therapists, nurses, educators how to do emotional resolutions with their clients or their patients.
So you're in the US now then?
I am. I'm in San Francisco, yeah.
Okay. Love it.
Yeah.
Love it.
Yeah, I'm in San Francisco. And in 2012, I founded the Emotional Health Institute together with a doctor from France and a doctor and a professor from Germany. And since then, our mission, our commitment is to understand how the brain constructs emotion and how the brain can deconstruct and heal emotions by itself. And we're having amazing results on things such as PTSD, depression, anxiety, or just, self-confidence issues. We have to understand that the human body is not meant to carry anxiety or anger or stress. Our default emotional state is contentment. All those emotions that keeps on coming back, all those patterns can be resolved. That's what we do.
Amazing. Well, that leads me to my next question, which is, you shared several of the different types of symptoms that people are experiencing in their life that are somewhat unwanted. Yeah. And I completely agree that the state of wellness involves, at least in my work, a neutrality, like entering life with sort of this like neutrality. What things happen can flow easily without some emotional reaction or trauma. And that's why I was excited to have you on, because but what I'm curious, are there other types of things that people are experiencing? I think you mentioned PTSD. Would people who are experiencing let's say active addiction, or perhaps I don't know if you said PTSD or if I just did.
we both did. Or anxiety or jealousy or guilt. Guilt is a cancer. People carry guilt sometimes for,
Yeah. And they feel it in their bodies. Like, people come to me because I'll feel it in their experience. So basically it's like anything that's unwanted with respect to an emotion.
That's correct. Absolutely.
So let's talk about what that means, because I was fascinated to learn a little bit more about your understanding of emotions and their actual source. Can you just kind of briefly say, what is an emotion and where do they come from?
Wow, that's a great question. I mean, I did a lot of interview, and that's the first time somebody asked me something like that clearly. I mean, I love to answer that. So from what we understand today in neuroscience, there is 2 main reasons that we have emotional pattern, disruptive emotional pattern. The first thing that can create a disruptive emotional pattern is an unwilling short loss of consciousness. So a moment when we lose consciousness by surprise, so to speak. So when did that happen? That happened at birth, that happened before birth, that happens during accidents, concussion, for example. That also happens if we go through under anesthesia and we go there very stressed.
Right.
So there's the first thing that can be at the origin of a pattern. The second thing would be a very intense stress. A very intense stress. Now, what we call a trauma, for example. But what is a trauma for you and me today isn't the same thing as a trauma for a 1-day-old baby. A baby coming from the womb and having, for example, the light of the hospital. That's a trauma.
Out of a nice, comfy place.
Yeah, absolutely. The stress is going up, These are trauma that we're all going through at some point.
Your cortisone and everything.
Yeah, cortisol, absolutely. What is happening when we have a loss of consciousness or a very high stress? When we have a very high stress, there's a moment of disconnection, of disassociation.
Right.
When there is a high stress or a loss of consciousness, the cognitive mind is disassociating for 1 to few seconds.
Is this like a form of shock?
Yeah, that's correct.
Okay.
Cognitive mind, if there's a shock, cognitive mind disconnect. Basically, we do not consciously record anything.
Mm-hmm.
However, the subconscious mind keep on recording everything. The subconscious mind can record up to 20 million bits of information a second.
Wow.
The conscious mind only records 40 bits of information a second.
Wow, that's a lot. I mean, say that again. So the conscious mind, if I'm hearing you correctly, can capture 40 bits of information at a time. That's our consciousness.
Correct.
And our subconscious captures, did you say 20 million?
Correct.
20 million.
20 million bits of information. It's insane.
That's everything.
That's everything. That's exactly what's happening during those moments of very high stress, of disassociation, let's say.
Mm-hmm.
The subconscious mind, so the conscious mind is out. It's normal. It's a defense mechanism. So we don't have to remember, so we don't have to suffer, so to speak, in the moment. However, the subconscious mind records everything, what we feel, what we taste, what we smell, what we hear, what we feel on our skin, and also what we feel inside of our body.
So these are our sensory
absolutely
pathways, if you will.
You got it. It records everything sensory, outside and inside, very precisely, but in a way that doesn't make any sense.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So it's not rational. It
is not rational. And that's the main thing about emotion. Emotions do not make any sense.
So how do they play into this sensory input trauma? How does it, I mean, we have so many different types of emotions. And I think one of the things I just want to comment on that I thought about as I came into recovery, and I was learning about emotions and how I was trying to identify what is it that I'm feeling right now? Yeah. Where am I right now? But at the same time, not just what is one emotion, but that you can actually feel two of them simultaneously, which a lot of people don't understand. We have such a binary thought around what emotions are that we think, oh, I'm just really sad right now. But you can be sad and hopeful. You can be sad and angry.
Yeah.
So can you talk a little bit about the interplay, if you will, between these sensory sensations that we have and emotions, and maybe how do they relate to each other?
Yeah, absolutely. I need to back off a little bit to be precise in the way that I would explain it. So when we have one of those trauma, right? Mm-hmm. After a while, we move on. But let's say as a kid, as a teenager, as an adult, as we go on life, when our subconscious mind, we have to understand that one of the main characteristics of our brain is to predict. We constantly predict in our life. That's the way that we process. If we were reacting to life, we'll be long dead.
Right.
We keep on predicting. For example, before we bite an apple, we know how it's going to taste like.
Right. Anticipatory.
It's constant prediction. For emotions, the brain function exactly the same. The brain function based predicting what we're going to feel based on the past experience.
Okay.
So when there is a trauma, and we have several of them, once we walk in life, and our subconscious brain is grasping one element that was present during one of the trauma we lived.
Right. Okay.
A smell, a taste, a situation, something that doesn't make sense cognitively. But when the subconscious mind grasp, recognize, feel something that was present during one of the trauma, the subconscious mind is going to predict right away what sensations you're going to feel inside based on what you felt at the moment that the trauma was created.
Right.
Those physical sensations that you just mentioned, we call that interoception in neuroscience. So the way it works is the subconscious mind recognizes an element. Immediately is going to predict what you're going to feel in your body based on what you felt the first time that the emotion was created. Your body is going to generate those physical sensations.
Right.
And that's the way that an emotion starts. An emotion starts with physiological sensations.
Mm.
The cognitive brain realize that there are sensations, try to put it into context, cannot control those physical sensations.
Mm-hmm. Right.
And that's when an emotion exists.
That's fascinating. So there is a thought out there in the, we'll just call it the Eastern uh, belief systems, and in particularly around the world of energy medicine. And that an emotion isn't in and of itself something that happens to us, but it is in fact our thought in response to an event that creates the belief about the event that then creates the emotion around it. So for example, I think a reaction to it. I'm not thinking of a good example, but I'd just like to know your thoughts about that. Because I think, let me just rephrase that.
Yes.
There's some thinking out there that says we every experience that we have, it is actually our reaction to it that causes the emotion. Meaning, we have a thought in response to that event, and the thought then creates a vibrational reaction in the body. What are your thoughts on that?
When it comes down to emotion, from my understanding from the sessions and the research I've been doing, is so there's two things. For me, when it comes down to emotional difficulty, it's almost the reverse. It's the reverse. The subconscious mind captures something, create physical sensations, and the emotion comes before the thought.
Okay, so the thought is the reaction to it, because you're talking about a state of shock that you're in, so you don't really have the cognitive capacity to think.
Correct.
Experience. Okay.
Correct.
So let me ask you a different question, because I was reading some science around the anticipatory nature of the heart. And they were doing exercises where they hooked up people to EEGs, and they had the meters on the hands to measure the precipitation, and heart monitors and brain responses. And what they had these participants do is to sit at a computer, and then they would display images.
Yes.
They were actually testing the reaction to responses. They thought they were testing how quickly does the body respond to stimulus. Yeah. But what they found was that the heart responded to images before the images were displayed by a fraction of a second. So for example, if they were to show a spider, the body might feel fear, but it was just a fraction of a second before, or a beautiful sunset. I'm curious about how that work that you do with the cognitive, capacities and emotions in the brain. Have you heard about this experiment?
No, I never heard about this experiment. And I think it's fascinating. I would love to know how it works, because I don't know. That's fascinating. I'm going to look into that.
Well, I think the way I think about it is that, because so many of us not only are physical, which is where our brain is, but we're non-physical, right? We do have these emotions which are outside of the third dimensional realm, if you will. They are frequencies that we send out, and in fact, we attract things to us in response to that. So that's why I was,
of that.
Yeah. So can you share a little bit about how you help people resolve these unwanted emotions that they're having? Like, how does that work?
Absolutely. And what you said about the frequency and the thought, attracting, I'm convinced of that. And from seeing it again and again and again, those creating thought, those frequencies out there become really powerful the less fear we have.
Right.
The less fear we have, the more we are in tune with those thoughts, the more we can actually attract to us the good that we want and we deserve that, absolutely. So my job is to eliminate the fear, so to speak. And the way to do it is quite simple. When the clients come to see me, we will, even if the client leave the trauma in their life, we never go back into the trauma. That's useless, and that's actually for me hurtful. We're going to take the person the way he or she is today. What is the problem today? What are the blockages? What are the fears? What are the emotional difficulties? And we're going to take each one of them. The person is going to say, for example, the person wants to work on anger. I will ask the client to give me a specific situation when they felt this anger in their current life. Based on the specific situation, we're going to be able to re-trigger very specifically this emotion in the body of the person.
Right. So they're experiencing this unwanted thing right in front of you.
Right in front of me, but I'm going to leave them in the emotion for about 2 seconds.
Mm-hmm.
Right when the emotions start to pop up, I'm going to hook their awareness to the physical sensations right away. So they're not in the emotional response anymore. They're just feeling what I call the DNA of the emotion. They just feel the emotion the most primal way possible through the physical sensations. That's how an emotion starts. That's how an emotion come up.
Right.
So they hook to that. And at this point, my job is very simple. They have to stay with those physical sensations, observing those physical sensations without trying to change them, or without trying to control or to understand them.
Just
Observing, say again?
Just allow them.
Just allow them and consciously observe them. Those sensations are going to evolve for between 2 seconds and 2.5 minutes maximum. If we are able to follow those sensations without interrupting the process of the body and simply observing them as they evolve in our body, it is enough to update a prediction from the brain. Because what is happening is, the brain is
association is no longer there.
This is correct. Imagine that the subconscious brain see a stimulus, feel a stimulus, predict what you're going to feel based on a past experience. And most of the time we react on it. We react on our emotion, we bottle it down, we do something with it.
We run.
We run, we fight, we inhibit it, we freeze. Now, if you feel the emotion, so the subconscious brain thinks there is a danger. Bring the physiological response. From the moment you are able to observe the physiological response and get the brain to understand that what it thought was a stimulus actually today has no impact on my life. I am able from a safe place to observe consciously those physical sensations. And instead of being hurt, like I have been years ago, nothing is happening to me. I am safe and sound. From that moment, the prediction is being updated.
Wow.
The brain updated prediction in a snap. Now it understands that whatever it felt as a stimulus is obsolete, is archaic, and it learns from it. The stimulus will never be a stimulus ever again. Once an emotion is resolved, it does not come back.
It's amazing. There are so many things that as you're talking that make me think about all the ways in which we're programmed with stimulus to have a response. I think of the media. I think about how we portray people of color in certain ways around, we should be fearful, particularly, as a privileged white male. There are a lot of ways in which we get programmed with these type of emotional responses, and they have an effect because of the fear.
Yeah,
it's so fascinating, man. This is awesome. So you also, I just want to shift a little bit. You also teach. You do some teaching in San Francisco. Do you have an online course as well? Do you? I do.
Absolutely. We can do this work on ourselves. Like, people don't need to come and see me. My goal is not to have clientele of people coming to see me. I do it. People come to see me and we resolve emotional difficulties. The way that I got paid, for example, is not per session, it's per resolution.
Oh, wow.
Someone come with a problem, we fix it together, that's it. But my goal is to teach this work to individuals so they can do it on themselves by themselves. We got to understand that emotions are not things that come upon us. Emotions come from us. We create them subconsciously, but they're part of us. It's not our fault if we're depressed or anxious or whatever, but it's our responsibility to resolve it, and we can do it. So yes, I teach people how they can do it on themselves by themselves, and I also teach therapists, nurses, doctors how to resolve emotional difficulties with their patients or their clients. And of course, I work with educators, teachers, special needs teachers, regular teachers, and I teach them how to do that on kids.
That's amazing, because the earlier we can learn how to resolve these, the better off we'll be in our lives, obviously.
Absolutely.
So how can people learn more about you and the work that you do?
They can go to my website, cedricbertelli.com, And the website of the Institute is being rebuilt right now, will be available again on June 15th. And it's going to be emotionalhealthinstitute.org. And here you're going to have all the information about the science, about the different courses, about the resources that you can use. And the classes can be done, of course, I rarely meet people on one-on-one. It's all via Skype or Zoom or online courses. We don't need to be in the same room so I can teach people. We can do that from all over the world.
That's awesome. And the website is CEDRIC BERTELLI.com.
That's it. You got it. Absolutely.
Wonderful. So we'll have this, so you can check out on divineinsight.com. We'll have this on the audio page there. We'll have this on iTunes, and this video will be put up on YouTube as well. Cedric, thank you so much for joining me on the show. I really appreciate your time, your incredible wisdom, insight, and information.
Thank you very much, Travis. It was a pleasure, and thank you for what you're doing. You have a great show.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
You're welcome. Have a good one.
You too.